I've learned over the years that love is not something you wait to feel before you act. Love is something you do, even when your heart feels tired, even when your hands feel empty, even when nobody is watching. People talk about love like it's a spark or a moment, but life taught me that love is work, quiet work, steady work, everyday work. Love is waking up and choosing kindness when you could just as easily choose silence. It's listening when your own problems are loud in your head. It's showing care when you don't get much back. I didn't always understand that when I was younger. Back then, I thought love meant big words and grand promises. But time has a way of sanding down those ideas until what's left is the truth. And the truth is this: love lives in the small things. Love is making room for people's flaws without keeping score. It's understanding that everyone carries a story you can't see. Some days, love looks like a smile. Other days, it looks like holding your tongue. And some days, love is simply staying when walking away would be easier. I've seen love stretched thin by hardship. I've seen it tested by disappointment and bent by loss. But I've also seen how strong it can be when it's real. Real love doesn't disappear when life gets heavy. It adjusts. It learns new shapes. It finds new ways to show up. There were times when giving love felt like pouring from a cup that was already cracked. You give and wonder if anything is staying inside. But what I learned is that love doesn't empty you when it's given with honesty. It refines you. It teaches you patience with yourself as much as with others. Love is feeding people even when you don't feel like eating yourself. Love is checking in when pride tells you to stay quiet. Love is forgiveness not because the hurt didn't matter, but because carrying bitterness costs more than letting go. I've learned that love doesn't mean agreeing all the time. It means respecting differences without letting them turn into walls. It means correcting with gentleness and receiving correction without hardening your heart. Love speaks the truth, but it doesn't use truth as a weapon. Some of the strongest love I've known never said much at all. It showed up early. It stayed late. It remembered birthdays and worries and quiet dreams. It didn't need applause. It didn't need credit. It just kept going. And let me tell you something important: love isn't weakness. The world will try to convince you that caring makes you soft, that kindness makes you vulnerable. But love takes more courage than anger ever will. It's easy to shut down. It's harder to stay open. It's easy to walk away. It's harder to remain steady when things fall apart. Love is choosing grace when you've been hurt. It's believing people can grow, even when they've disappointed you. It's offering second chances without becoming foolish, and setting boundaries without becoming cold. Love knows when to hold close and when to step back, and that wisdom only comes with time. I didn't always get it right. Love doesn't promise perfection. There were days I spoke too sharply, days I held on too tightly, days I didn't say enough. But love also taught me that mistakes don't cancel care. What matters is the willingness to learn and the humility to try again. As the years passed, I noticed something else. Love leaves traces. You may not see them right away, but they remain in the way people remember how you made them feel, in the comfort they carry forward, in the gentleness they pass on to others. Love multiplies quietly. If there's one thing I hope people understand, it's that love doesn't need to be loud to be powerful. It doesn't need perfect timing or perfect conditions. Love works with what it has. It shows up tired. It shows up unsure. It shows up anyway. So when life asks you who you are, let love be part of the answer. Not the kind that only shines on good days, but the kind that holds steady through the long ones. the kind that forgives, that listens, that stays. Because in the end, love isn't just something you give to others. It's something that shapes the way you live, the way you endure, and the way you are remembered. I wasn't always patient. I had to grow into it the long way, the hard way, the way most real lessons are learned. When you're young, you think patience means waiting for something better to come along. But as the years pass, you realize patience isn't about waiting at all. It's about how you behave while you're waiting. Patience is learning to sit with unanswered questions without letting them turn you bitter. It's waking up day after day and doing what needs to be done, even when the results don't show themselves right away. Life doesn't move on our schedule, no matter how much we beg or plan or worry. And once you accept that, patience stops feeling like a punishment and starts feeling like a kind of peace. I learned patience through repetition, through routines that didn't change much, through days that looked just like the ones before them. At first, that kind of sameness can feel discouraging. You wonder if you're stuck, if you're falling behind, if everyone else is moving forward while you're standing still. But what I came to understand is that stillness doesn't mean nothing is happening. Some of the most important work happens quietly beneath the surface. Patience teaches you how to listen, not just to others, but to yourself. When you stop rushing, you start noticing things the way your body tells you when it's tired, the way your heart reacts before your mouth does, the way silence can carry its own answers. In a world that's always pushing you to hurry, patience feels almost rebellious, but it's necessary. There were times I wanted to speak just to fill the space, times I wanted to react instead of reflect. Patience taught me to pause, and in that pause, I often found better words, or realized no words were needed at all. Not every moment requires a response. Not every problem needs to be solved right away. Some things work themselves out when you give them room to breathe. Patience is also learning to accept people where they are, not where you wish they'd be. That one took me a long time. It's easy to love folks when they meet your expectations. It's harder when they move slower than you'd like or make the same mistakes more than once. But patience reminds you that growth isn't a straight line. It bends, it doubles back, it takes detours. And most of us needed grace more than once to get where we are. I learned patience by watching seasons change. Nothing blooms all year long. There's a time for planting, a time for tending, and a time for resting. You can't rush a seed by pulling on it. All you do is break it. The same is true with people, with dreams, with healing. When you rush what isn't ready, you do more harm than good. Patience also taught me humility. It showed me that I don't control as much as I once thought I did. You can do everything right and still have to wait. You can give your best and still not see immediate results. That doesn't mean your effort was wasted. It means life is doing its part in its own time. There were days patience felt heavy, days when waiting felt like loss, days when silence felt like rejection. On those days, patience wasn't peaceful at all. It was work. Hard work. It was holding on when you wanted to let go, trusting when you didn't have proof, believing something good could come from a place that felt empty. But patience has a way of softening you instead of hardening you if you let it. It teaches you compassion for others and for yourself. It teaches you that mistakes are part of learning, not signs of failure. It teaches you that not everything needs to be fixed immediately, and some things are meant to be carried for a while. I've learned that patience doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care enough not to force things into shapes they're not meant to take. It means you respect the process. even when it's uncomfortable. It means you understand that rushing rarely leads to wisdom. Over time, patience changes the way you see success. You stop measuring life by quick wins and start valuing steady progress. You stop comparing your path to someone else's and start honoring your own pace. You realize that some of the strongest people you know didn't get there fast. They got there faithfully. Patience also gives you perspective. When you've waded through storms, you don't panic at the first sign of rain. When you've endured uncertainty, you don't crumble at small delays. You learn that most things pass, and the ones that last are worth waiting for. I won't pretend patience came naturally to me. It was learned through trial, through disappointment, through moments when I had no choice but to slow down. But looking back, I'm grateful for every lesson it taught me. Patience gave me steadier hands, a calmer heart, and a deeper understanding of what truly matters. So if life has you waiting right now, don't assume nothing is happening. Waiting is not wasted time. It's shaping you. It's strengthening you. It's teaching you how to endure without losing yourself. And one day, you'll look back and realize that patience didn't just help you get through. It helped you become. Perseverance isn't something I woke up with one day and decided to carry. It was handed to me little by little through ordinary days that asked more of me than I thought I had to give. I learned perseverance the same way most people do, by needing it, by finding myself in places where quitting felt reasonable, where resting too long felt tempting, where starting over seemed easier than continuing on. Life has a way of wearing you down quietly. It's not always the big storms that test you, but the constant drizzle, the daily responsibilities, the problems that don't have neat endings, the effort that goes unnoticed. Perseverance is what keeps you moving through all that, even when there's no applause waiting on the other side. I learned early that perseverance doesn't look heroic most days. It looks like getting up when your body feels heavy. It looks like doing your work well even when your heart isn't in it. It looks like choosing responsibility over comfort and consistency over excitement. There were many days when all I could do was take the next step. And I learned that sometimes the next step is enough. Perseverance teaches you how to make peace with progress that feels slow. When you're living inside the struggle, it's hard to see how far you've come. You measure yourself against where you wish you were instead of where you started. But if you keep going long enough, you begin to understand that steady movement matters more than speed. What's built slowly often lasts longer. There were moments when I wanted signs, some clear signal that the effort was worth it. But perseverance doesn't promise reassurance. It asks for faith without evidence, for commitment without guarantees. You keep showing up not because you're certain of the outcome, but because stopping would cost you something deeper than failure ever could. Perseverance also teaches you about endurance of the spirit. Your body can rest, but your will has to stay awake. There were times when discouragement tried to settle in and make itself comfortable. It whispered that this was as good as it would get, that nothing would change, that trying again was foolish. Perseverance is learning to recognize that voice and not let it be the one you listen to. I learned perseverance by carrying responsibilities that didn't pause when I was tired. Life didn't wait for me to feel ready. It asked me to grow while I was still learning how. It asked me to be strong before I felt strong. And somehow, by doing what needed to be done, strength found me. Perseverance is not about ignoring pain. It's about moving forward with it. There's a difference. You don't pretend things don't hurt. You don't rush healing. You simply refuse to let pain have the final word. You allow yourself to feel, to grieve, to rest when you can. But you don't surrender your direction. Some days perseverance meant adjusting expectations, letting go of how I thought life should look and accepting what it actually was. That wasn't giving up, that was learning how to survive with grace. Perseverance isn't stubbornness. It's wisdom that knows when to bend without breaking. I've learned that perseverance builds character in quiet ways. It teaches discipline when motivation fades. It teaches humility when pride wants credit. It teaches gratitude when circumstances offer little. Over time, it shapes how you respond to challenges. You stop panicking at difficulty because you've faced it before and lived through it. There were seasons when perseverance felt lonely, when it seemed like others moved on while I stayed behind, tending to things that still needed care. But perseverance taught me that staying is sometimes braver than leaving. Finishing is sometimes harder than starting. And being dependable matters even when it goes unnoticed. I also learned that perseverance doesn't mean doing everything alone. Knowing when to ask for help is part of enduring. Knowing when to rest is part of continuing. You don't prove strength by breaking yourself. You prove it by lasting. Looking back, I see how perseverance connected all the parts of my life. It carried me through uncertainty, through disappointment, through long stretches where progress felt invisible. And when I finally reached places I once only hoped for, I realized something important. I didn't arrive suddenly. I arrived slowly, shaped by every step I didn't skip. Perseverance didn't make life easy, it made life possible. It taught me that resilience isn't loud or dramatic. It's steady, it's faithful, it's choosing to keep going when there are 100 good reasons to stop. If there's anything I can pass on, it's this. Don't underestimate the power of staying with your life. Stay with your work, stay with your growth, stay with your healing. Even when the road feels long, every step you take is carrying you forward. Perseverance doesn't promise you'll get everything you want, but it will give you something just as valuable, a sense of dignity, a quiet confidence, and the knowledge that when life tested you, you didn't walk away, you stayed, and sometimes staying is the greatest victory of all. Pain has a way of finding you whether you invite it or not. I learned that early on. You can live carefully, do your best, mind your manners, and still find yourself hurting in ways you never planned for. Pain doesn't ask permission. It arrives quietly sometimes, loudly other times, but it always asks the same question in the end. What are you going to do with me? For a long time, I thought pain was something to get over as quickly as possible. I wanted to push past it, tuck it away, pretend it hadn't touched me. But pain doesn't disappear just because you ignore it. It waits, and if you don't face it honestly, it settles into places you don't expect. Your tone, your temper, your trust. What I came to understand, slowly and sometimes reluctantly, is that pain itself isn't what hardens you. It's what you do with it that makes the difference. Pain can teach you, or it can poison you. The choice isn't always easy, and it's rarely quick, but it's always there. There were moments when bitterness felt justified, when holding on to hurt seemed like proof that what happened mattered. And it did matter. Pain deserves to be acknowledged. But bitterness is what happens when pain is left unattended for too long. It sharpens your memories and dulls your compassion. It convinces you that guarding your heart means closing it off completely. I had to learn that feeling pain doesn't make you weak, it makes you human. Crying doesn't mean you've lost strength. Sometimes it's how strength clears space to breathe. The danger isn't in feeling deeply, it's in letting those feelings turn into walls instead of windows. Learning from pain requires honesty. You have to be willing to look at what hurt you without rewriting the story to make yourself flawless or others entirely heartless. Most situations are complicated. Most people are carrying their own broken pieces. That doesn't excuse harm, but it does keep you from becoming consumed by it. Pain taught me patience in ways nothing else could. Healing doesn't move on a schedule. Some wounds close quickly. Others ache long after they look healed from the outside. I learned to stop asking myself why I wasn't over it yet and start asking what the pain was trying to show me. Sometimes pain shows you where your boundaries should be. Sometimes it reveals what you value most. Sometimes it teaches you empathy, because once you've hurt deeply, you recognize that same look in others. Pain, when handled gently, can make you more understanding, not more guarded. There were days when bitterness tried to take root. It sounded reasonable. It told me to protect myself by expecting the worst. It told me that staying soft was dangerous. But bitterness narrows your world. It shrinks your joy. It makes you suspicious of kindness and dismissive of hope. I didn't want to live that way, so I learned to separate memory from resentment. Remembering is healthy. It honors what you've lived through. Resentment, on the other hand, keeps reopening the wound. I learned that forgiving doesn't mean forgetting, and it doesn't mean pretending things were okay when they weren't. Forgiveness is choosing not to let the past dictate the future of your heart. Pain also taught me humility. It reminded me that I'm not immune to hardship and not superior because I survived it. Everyone you meet is carrying something. When you understand that, you stop being so quick to judge. You learn to speak more gently. You listen more carefully. I learned that bitterness often comes from unspoken grief, from losses that weren't acknowledged, from apologies that never came, from expectations that went unmet. When you give yourself permission to grieve honestly, bitterness loses some of its power. Grief moves. Bitterness stays stuck. Learning from pain means asking hard questions. What did this change in me? What did it reveal about my needs? What patterns do I need to break? Pain can be a teacher, but only if you're willing to sit with the lesson instead of running from the discomfort. I also learned that healing doesn't mean you come out untouched. You come out changed, softer in some places, stronger in others. Pain reshapes you, but it doesn't get to define you unless you let it. You can carry scars without carrying anger. You can be cautious without being closed. There were times when choosing not to be bitter felt like work, like swimming against a current that wanted to pull me under. But each time I chose understanding over resentment, I felt lighter. Not because the pain vanished, but because it no longer controlled me. Pain taught me gratitude in unexpected ways. Not gratitude for the hurt itself, but for the clarity it brought. It showed me who I could rely on. It showed me what mattered. It showed me that I was capable of enduring more than I thought. I won't pretend that pain always makes sense. Some things never get clear explanations. Some losses never feel fair, but meaning doesn't always come from answers. Sometimes it comes from how you continue living when answers don't arrive. I've learned that you don't honor your pain by staying angry. You honor it by letting it deepen your wisdom, by allowing it to expand your compassion instead of shrinking your heart, by refusing to let it turn you into someone you don't recognize. So when pain finds you, and it will at some point, don't rush yourself through it and don't let it settle into bitterness. Sit with it, learn from it, let it teach you what you need to know, then gently loosen its grip, because pain may shape parts of your story, but it doesn't have to write the ending. You get to decide whether it makes you harder or wiser, closed or compassionate. And I've learned that choosing wisdom again and again is one of the quietest and strongest acts a person can make. I've come to understand that what you leave behind has very little to do with what you own and everything to do with how you live. People remember actions long after words fade. They remember how you treated them when you didn't have to be kind, how you handled yourself when things went wrong, and how steady you were when life tested you. That's the kind of legacy that lasts. For a long time, I didn't think much about legacy. I thought it was something only important people worried about, something reserved for history books and big accomplishments. But life taught me otherwise. Legacy is built in kitchens and hallways, in conversations that last 5 minutes and habits that last a lifetime. It's built when nobody is watching and when there's no reward waiting at the end. I learned that people, especially the young ones, are always paying attention. They may not listen closely to what you say, but they study what you do. They notice how you speak when you're tired, how you react when you're disappointed, how you treat people who can't give you anything in return. Your example speaks even when you don't realize you're teaching. I didn't set out to be a model for anyone. I was just trying to do what needed to be done, but that's often how it happens. You live your life the best way you know how, and along the way, others take notes. They borrow your courage, your patience, your calm, or they learn what not to do by watching your mistakes. Either way, something is being passed on. One of the hardest lessons I learned is that consistency matters more than perfection. You don't have to get everything right to leave a meaningful example. What matters is showing up honestly, admitting when you're wrong, and trying again. People learn resilience not by seeing flawless lives, but by watching someone stumble and still stand back up. I learned that how you handle pressure becomes part of your legacy. Anyone can be pleasant when things are easy. Character shows itself when plans fall apart, when resources run thin, when patience is tested. In those moments, your choices leave marks. They show others what's possible, what's acceptable, and what's worth holding on to. Legacy is also shaped by the values you live, not just the ones you claim. You can talk about kindness all day long, but if your actions are sharp and dismissive, that's the lesson that sticks. You can speak about honesty, but if you cut corners when it's convenient, people notice. Living your values quietly, day after day, is what gives them weight. I've learned that small acts carry more influence than grand gestures, a steady presence, a listening ear, a calm response instead of a harsh one. These things don't make headlines, but they shape lives. They create a sense of safety and trust that people carry with them long after the moment has passed. There were times I didn't realize I was setting an example until years later. Someone would mention something I said once, or something I did without much thought, and I'd be surprised it was remembered at all. That taught me to be more mindful, not fearful, but aware. Aware that every day offers chances to plant seeds you may never see grow. Legacy is also about what you choose not to pass on. You can decide that certain habits, certain angers, certain fears stop with you. That choice matters. Breaking a cycle is just as powerful as starting a tradition. Sometimes the greatest example you set is refusing to repeat what hurt you. I learned that humility strengthens your legacy. Acting like you have all the answers builds distance. Being willing to learn, to listen, to change your mind that builds connection. People are more inspired by someone who grows openly than by someone who pretends to have arrived. Legacy isn't about control. You don't get to decide exactly how others will interpret your life. You can only decide how you live it. Once that example is out in the world, it takes on a life of its own. Some lessons will land the way you intended. Others will be understood differently. That's part of letting go. I also learned that legacy doesn't require recognition. Many of the most influential people never receive public praise. Their impact lives quietly in the confidence they helped build, the courage they encouraged, the calm they modeled. Influence doesn't need an audience to be real. There were days when doing the right thing felt unnoticed and unappreciated, days when it seemed easier to lower the standard or give in to frustration. But I reminded myself that example isn't about being seen. It's about being steady. It's about choosing integrity even when nobody thanks you for it. Legacy is built over time. One decision doesn't define it. One mistake doesn't erase it. It's the pattern that matters, the direction. The willingness to keep aligning your actions with the kind of life you believe in. I've learned that the truest measure of a life isn't how impressive it looks from the outside, but how it makes others feel on the inside. Safe, respected, encouraged, seen, those feelings don't fade easily. As the years pass, what matters to me most is not being remembered for what I achieved, but for how I treated people along the way, for the steadiness I tried to offer, for the honesty I tried to live, for the care I tried to show, even when I didn't have much else to give. If there's one thing I hope others carry forward, it's this understanding. Your life is always teaching something, whether you intend it or not. So live in a way that leaves room for kindness, patience, and perseverance to be passed on. You don't have to be loud to be lasting. You don't have to be perfect to be meaningful. Just live with care. Live with purpose. Live in a way that, when your example walks ahead of you, it leads somewhere worth following.